is kind of like the update. This is what they are telling us their data says. Now, as you'll see, we probably have some conflicting opinions on some of that data, but this is what they're going to balance off of. So that is why we need to focus on it.
Crazy things.
True story. And we have to get ready for it. And the thing is as always, we don't really want to make huge predictions and stuff, but you have to be aware of them. It's important to, again, always don't chase the meta, but be very aware of what you're going to have to face. And it does come into play with your army construction, because you have to be at least acknowledge what you're going to see. Do I have the answers for the things that I know are going to be out there?
Yeah, and you gotta, preparation is key. If you haven't seen a deal with it before, what we do is usually we talk about some of the top armies in the meta and how to build and play your particular faction in a way that makes sense. What do we mean by that? It means how do you prepare for a tournament? What rulings do you need to know? What combos are in your army that maybe you haven't thought of? What units, getting you thinking about what units are in your army and what they're actually supposed to be doing and what you want them to be doing. And as we'll see in the second half of this video, GW gave us a little nugget, a little kernel of how they're actually designing the codices and what they intend for detachments to be doing. So that's in the second part.
Remember when I said I forgot to change where it was going on Restream? Well, that might have been done a little bit to my stream, not your stream. So, but alas, we're here, we're ready, we're psyched. It's the hat. It's actually ears. These are, my wife collects different little ears and stuff, like Disney stuff, and this is a princess unicorn horn. And I went in to change my shirt because I was wearing a green salamander shirt, and that apparently doesn't do well on a green screen, so I just look see-through. Now we're doing this. So, you ready to talk about some win rates, my friend? Or at least win rates according to GW?
I am ready to talk about some win rates according to GW. That is what we're going to talk about.
I know you're going to be surprised. Do you have your surprise seat on? Aeldari still doing really good.
Wow, who'd have thought?
Crazy. Mind blown. It's just, I mean, yeah. They're no longer ridiculous, but they are still at the top. And then you've got them followed by the boys that I was playing in the last 4 tournaments. Orcs. Orc OP. I mean, I kept declaring that as a joke, but apparently it might get them hurt. Sorry, WoG masters, war leaders, war bosses.
Yeah, no, and that's not a joke. Brad just texts me every weekend, hey, Orcs OP. And that's it.
That is true. As you ever text me before, yeah, I'm not the king of communication there. So, for a change, Eddie, it is actually Brits that these are hers. These are very tiny too. Rip pointy elves. Yeah, if you haven't seen the meme of the, look, we had first nerf, but what about second nerf?
Exactly, and that is where we're heading for sure.
Indeed, it is. It is the Sally shirt that's got his big crazy face on it. Finally, super chat from Mr. Keith Murphy. Started watching you guys' content about a month ago, and it's been fantastic. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate that, Keith.
We are trying to get a thing. So let's talk about what else we have in here, and in the why, to be honest with you. I talked a little bit about this last night when we were doing the weekend recap. CSM did really well over the weekend, and it's been doing really well since the data slate. And I think one of the main reasons they are is they played very well into Aeldari.
Yep. Turns out what's really good against Aeldari is having this Nurgle Rhino, which Aeldari can't interact with, and then it runs forward and dumps out cheap units that can basically kill anything that Aeldari has in one activation. That is not what they want to see.
And the thing is that you couple that up with ridiculous damage from shooting. Now, they don't have a ton of stuff, but man, the stuff they have puts out like a monstrous amount of output. So when you're looking into what you have to face on this, let's go down the line, because the meta is very diverse at this point in time. Also, some of these win rates are a lot different than they have for Meta Monday. Tau is significantly higher than they have for Meta Monday right now. in the last 2 weeks. And you have some armies that put out some ridiculous damage. And then you've also got some armies that do some ridiculous board control. World Eaters, while they're known as an aggressive army, that's an army where they want to scare you with, I can go here. And then they basically put the brakes on and just stand on all the objectives and hide.
Yep.
And go, what? Do something about it. Orcs. Orcs sitting in. I've been playing this for a while. Orcs, literally my whole game plan is score lots of points with trash units and try to put baby in the corner. That's the whole game plan. you just score points and sit there.
Honestly, it's a good game plan. Like, I'm a fan of that game plan.
So, and the big thing about that is you have to be prepared for a lot. It might be. We have the meta's sitting very good right now, and I'm very optimistic because of the fact that we've had 2 good codices in a row where they felt very, very balanced. And when I say, usually when you say balanced, you mean meh, and they don't make an impact. All of these armies have, or these 2 new codices have multiple formations, faction, or armies in them that are fully tournament worthy. They can win in GT. I'm going to be taking Marines in a second here. So, like, there's all kinds of things you can do with that, and I think that they're going to be represented fairly everywhere on that. So when you're getting ready, just look at these top 10, top 5, top 10. You literally have to be ready for board control, mass, not even just a horde, but like a horde of units, multiple units, a lot of MSU. And then you also have to be ready for Aeldari shenanigans with high damage output. You have to be ready for CSM shenanigans with untargetable units, advance and charge occasionally. Huge damage with full rerolls, double exploding 6s, lethal hits. They can just, we were having, Carmona was laughing about it. He killed the Incarn on Overwatch. He's like, yeah, I shot 9 times and got 11 wounds through. You're like, what? It's just a big deal on that. That army can put out like a mad amount of damage. So your army, anything that you're getting ready right now in this meta has to be able to take on so many different types of armies. And unless you're trying to just roll the dice and hope you only meet the things you've teched for, let's talk about the fact that you have to be ready to take out hard targets. You have to be ready to take on MSU. And with things like Templars and GSC still around there, you have to be ready to take out hordes. You have to build the most versatile army I've seen in a long time in 40K.
Yeah, this meta is definitely asking a lot of you. So when you're going back through some of our other Deal With It videos, if you're a World Eaters player, if you're an Orcs player, you're really going to have to dig deep and know what you want to be doing to try to approach a meta like this. Because if you just say, like some of the earlier meta of 10th, where it was just basically 4 factions existing. And as a competitive player, that may sound pretty great, right? Because you only have to tech for a few things. You can't really do that in this meta with, what is this, 18 factions, all relatively healthy win rates. Yeah, man, you're going to run into 7 different armies.
And to go with that, though, I do have to back up the thing I say quite a bit, which is lean into your army strengths. Do not try to just shore up your army weaknesses. Don't completely ignore stuff, but don't focus too much on that. You never want to go get 5% better at your bad match and 20% worse at everything else. For instance, the Orc armies I bring have a couple things that they're bad against, but I lean into the things that they're good against. Board control, volume of attacks, volume of shots from people like Badrock and the Flash Kits, taking the board. Are you going to be the most damaging army in the game? Nope. Can you score the most points? Yep. That's all I really need. So, exactly. Take pirates and profit. 100%, Austin.
Only Flash Kits. Yes.
It's a big deal on that to make sure that you have the ability to just win the game. When you look at your plan, you always have to have a battle plan. And that battle plan doesn't have to be, I dominate this army. It has to be, how am I scoring more points than my opponent? And you have to have those things built in. We talk about a lot of times with practice and adjustments and everything. You have to be able to put your army on the board and go, how am I scoring? And I talk about it all the time. It's just, if you're not taking fixed, my practice a lot of times is put your army on the board in the basement at the game store in TTS. Pull 2 cards, see what would have to go to score those cards. Pull 2 more cards. Basically pull 5 sets of cards And can my army do that? And then you have to ask the next question of, hey, if Sean drives his entire army up to the midboard and goes, do something about it, can I do something about it? Do I have enough damage output? And also, do I have enough get in the way? Do I have enough move blocks? Trash. I always have enough trash, of course. So
Brad is the trash master. Yeah, I guess if we had to, before we dive into kind of like kind of the good, bad, and the ugly of this portion of the video, I want to say, if you're going to try to tech for different things, what do you need to worry about? Well, you need to worry about Night Spinner slowing you down. That's one thing you got to worry about. Then you got to worry about World Eaters potentially, and Orcs sometimes, potentially running straight at you. But you also need to worry about things like Sisters, who are just bringing, hordes of units that are just going to stay barely out of reach and score points. So it's very just very diverse of what you need to tech for in your armies.
The good. I love that it's just the same Aeldari picture you've sent multiple times.
You have something to do with this one, at least this time.
I didn't play them. Aeldari and Orks a little too strong. They are not. Step away. You know what? I've already literally said I'm okay the fact that what did you do to my boy? Look how you massacred my boy with my Eldar. I just haven't bothered to play him. I played them once and I was like, whoop, well, come back to you guys in about a year. And then I picked up my Orks, which are one of my favorite things. Step away from the Orks. They're not too powerful. I really think that. I just think that they have tools. They really just have tools.
They do. And one thing for this metawatch kind of video analysis, any quotes that you see are going to be taken directly from GW's metawatch video, and I've done my best to quote them as best as possible. But anytime you want to fact check me, go ahead and watch the video. That's where I'm pulling all this information from.
He said that they're a little too strong. Also, you have to ask yourself, what is the actual win rate? Because of the fact that, for instance, the Orcs, Metamoney has them at 51, not 56. So it's one of those, hey, if they get hit with a nerf, is your data wrong? Because I really like the Metamonday data. I am a pretty unicorn.
That is right. Brad is a pretty unicorn right now, and he has taken his pretty unicorn powers and pushed this win rate so far up in GW's eyes that suddenly Orcs are too good all of a sudden.
Stay away from the Orcs. I like that I'm playing something different in the very next tournament I'm going to also. My work here is done.
Yeah, you just wait. Just wait till Space Marines are receiving the next nerf after Brad texts me Space Marines OP for 4 weekends in a row.
And then I immediately bail on them and move to something else. It's an 80s action movie behind me. Just explosions and fires just as I'm walking.
Yeah. So one thing, as you can see here, obviously on the slide, everybody, GW's win rate, Meta Monday's win rate. Which one is more valid? We're not going to get into that. We are going to say that Meta Monday does have a good metric, which is events with X amount of people and X amount of rounds. Okay, that's, you got to pick somewhere to be your metric. Clearly, GW has their own. And, as we talk about, this is dealing with the meta, not, picking and choosing what we pick. So these are the win rates that GW is going to look at and say, is this a problem? Is this not a problem? Maybe they're going to hit Orcs and Orcs are going to drop win rate, and dealing with it is part about accepting that and knowing, okay, this is what's going to happen.
We did make a joke that I was going to bring Bubble Chuckers to Nova, and then they got point nerfed after that.
There may be some people watching,
That was awesome. Anna and I talked about that. It's like, let's just take Bubble Chuckers. Why? Because I really want to say Bubble Chuck on stream. So that sometimes you got to take things for obvious tech reasons. But the big thing is, you're going to see these. The more important factor is, for me, for GW, they look at the win rate and stuff. For me, when I'm looking to get ready for a tournament, I look at and that's why I use the Meta Monday stuff a lot. How many people are playing these armies? How many games were played with Eldar, with Orcs? Orcs were fairly well represented, but Eldar had, and has had, a crazy amount of players playing it in every single tournament. You're going to have to be able to take on Eldar. Do you need to tech your army for Eldar? No. Do you need to have an army that can play into Eldar and has a game plan to win against Eldar? Yes. You have to, and it doesn't matter whether they're, I want to go back to the win rate themselves, actually. When you look at these win rates, yes, they're all within a disparity point, a point of this. It really depends on how many games are being played with those particular armies. Because, yes, say Grey Knights, for instance, it's not, but like if Grey Knights had 1 billion games being played, even though they're at 46%, I would still have to make sure that I had the proper things in my army that can defeat that army. Is it my game plan? Is it, and a lot of times it's not just you into that army, it's you being aware of what that army does and having the right tools. Don't tech into it, but make sure that you have the ability to score your game plan, score your points. That's so important to put up points. They've done so many of the, in the past, the win rate percentages, depending on how many points you score. And when you go from 70 to 80, it's such a wild difference in the win rate percentage. You got to be able to score points. That has to be built into any army that you put on the board, especially now when you're going to be facing so many different things. I can't even stress that enough. You have to be able to score. Just killing is just not enough. There's too many armies that can put things all over the board. I can't tell you the amount of Orc games where people walk up and go, "Whoo, you got ruined, Brad." I'm like, I won by 25. Like, because you just have to put your points up, put your points up, put your points up. It's, tactical objectives, especially when you're talking about missions like Scorched or Priority, maybe even Purge, where you just can't get a huge amount of points for taking the board. That's a big deal on that. Putting up your points and keeping the game close, even if you're getting smashed, is such a big deal, but you have to design your lists around being able to do that.
Yeah, and the part of Brad and I doing Deal With It is we're giving you that, we're answering the question, how are top players winning with, for example, you see Space Marines down there at 47%. I went 7-1 with them. How are you doing that? Well, I just knew what all my stuff was going to do for me. I made that plan ahead of time. I've literally broke down and showed you in our video. I just do the 5 steps of Deal With It. You gotta do these things every time you make an army. And if you do that, this is one of the best metas to take any army and put up results with them.
Make it work. Austin does have a good point, because they did say in the GW meta video, they were praising Orcs as one of the factions that's sitting down and figuring the fuck out. So maybe they won't nerf Orcs at all. They're just saying that they do have the tools to figure it out in the middle. Which I do like. Is the hope. Go ahead.
Yeah, that is 100% the hope, Austin. The hope is that they, while they do have their own data, hopefully, a lot of guys are close with some of the GW guys. Hopefully they are using other sources as in addition to their own, not instead of, but in addition. And they say, well, what do we wait on this faction? Do we pull the trigger on nerfs on this other faction? Hopefully they're considering all those things. And as you'll get to, they said the next time they will actually put all of that into practice and do something or not is in January. So we'll have to wait and see.
So one of the big things I do, Evan, I agree on this, because I think that AdMac might get too strong when the books come out. The one book that I'm really terrified of is AdMac, because I already think that they have a horde ability. And I think that if they get a ton of guns that are worthwhile and cheaper, which a lot of times you get in the Codex, they could be just insane.
Yeah, I actually agree with that too. I think whereas AdMech really struggles right now into the tops, I think they actually have fairly decent game into a lot of the mid-table threats you're seeing. And given if their Codex just comes out swinging, that's going to be very, very difficult to adjust to, because it's not something that a lot of players have been playing against.
And yes, I did put that up in a poll.
Respect. Please vote for mashed or noodles for Brandon. He's got to know. Still Frosty Gaming has got to know.
Has to know. It's one of the things. Oh, Andy, as a Custodes player, goes, Orc players never stop bitching about Custodes, so I hope GW nerfs the green off them.
Speaking of that, Brad, why
Yep.
don't you move us on to
The
bad
bad.
here?
So I'm going to go into why on the bad. Obviously, we got a big picture of Imperial Knight and some Custodes next to him. So here's the deal with both of these. And I can tell you 100% what happened. And I don't know 100% how we need to bring them back. But what happened with both Custodes and Imperial Knights is they had multiple nerfs. There was no one big thing they did. What they did was they gave each of these factions four different nerfs. I actually think Knights got 5, but they got 4 different nerfs, and the synergy in that, the gestalt of everything, which I feel that sometimes they just don't understand, is that everything together. Were any one of the nerfs ridiculous? No. Together though, they're just bringing that win rate down. Because they cost more. They have less rules. Now they have less rerolls. Their faction detachment doesn't exist. And they took points nerfs already. So what does that mean? Well, we should probably roll some of this stuff back for sure. Imperial Knights is easy for me. They took points. They gave them point nerfs before they took away towering. Well, those point nerfs are supposed to be because of towering. And then they toned down the rerolls. And then they took away towering, and you're like, all right, well, you got to do something about one of those, you know what I mean? Or multiples of them. I think they should just go back to what they were. Knights without towering don't feel terrible to me. Give them back all their stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that, Brad. I think, people really complained about the rerolls to the point where you had, everyone arguing about how they worked, what was intended. Not going to get into that. I think Knights now with rerolls sounds about right. I mean, think about how much you're paying for these models. If you're paying 450 points for a unit, it probably should look at one other unit and pick it up. And that has never been an issue for Knights, I don't believe. And it seems kind of odd to make it not about moving around the board, hiding from the Knights, engaging them in different ways, to just be like, yeah, they don't have damage, they don't really have visibility, they don't really have, they're overcosted. Probably just give them something, and they did say that, the quote here is, we hit them a little too hard, probably. Yeah, you think maybe just a little too hard there.
And the thing with the Custodes, let's go to Custodes now on the thing, because Billy KR throws up, units got smaller too, which is a big deal. You can't just put 10 bros in the middle. Or wherever they sat. But they got, again, death by 1,000 cuts. Also, their detachment rule now works against what? Tank shock, explosion, and doombolt. There you go. So, they don't even have a detachment rule. So, the points, plus the rules, plus the one strat got nerfed, is a big deal in that. Well, they got nerfed because of the fact that in the data slate themselves, they turned the only battle shocks could be used by captains and things of that nature to make them be able to spam their CP. So with Custodes, I think that Imperial Knights are actually easier to fix than Custodes, because I think that the Imperial Knights just need to go back to what they were. Yep. And the Custodes have to be reworked a smidge, because they took several odd nerfs, in some bunch of side steps, which the unit sizes, the detachment rules, and things of that nature, all of that goes together. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that Custodes is kind of the problem child, where if you are a middle table player, this army will bully you relentlessly, because it's just rolling 4-up saves, it's taking 2-up against your small arms fire, and it touches your units and they evaporate. Where is this win rate coming from? It's coming from the fact that they have distinct weaknesses that once you figure them out, Custodes is like, yep, you put the missing puzzle piece in, I now am not that great. So what do you do about that? Well, one of the proposed changes I think would be good is just give them a flat feel no pain. And before we get all crazy, because we did have this conversation in one of the DOG chats, I'm not talking a 4-up feel no pain army wide. I'm not even talking a 5-up feel no pain army wide. But I think realistically, if you want to bump them up a few percentage points without breaking the game, give Custodes a flat 6-up Feel No Pain as their detachment rule. That way, they're slightly more durable. They are really going to feel that change when you try to drop, like what I was doing. 52 AP2 ignore cover saves on them. Okay, is that still going to pick up the unit most of the time? Sure. But with a 6-up Feel No Pain, it's at least not guaranteed. And more importantly, you can't just drop, damage 3 dev wounds on Custodes and just say your 250 point, your 350 point unit is just gone because I rolled some 6s. And I think that's really what's suppressing their win rate right now.
It's a big deal on that, to be honest. It also, Joe from Monday said a good point. He goes, the buff to now good shooting factions, Tau Votan, the ability to deal with armor contempt was a big thing for the Custodes. You know what I mean? Like, they got smaller units, and all of a sudden these armies just went, hey, cool, you have 5-man squads. Take 6,000 saves,
Yeah.
Also, your stuff went up. So that's a big deal on that. So the thing is if you're taking one of these factions, what are your thoughts on these? Is this something that if you're a pure player, we kind of deal with and move on? Or is this wait for them to fix it, play your other faction until then?
So that's a hard question. I am someone who has a bunch of armies, so I will always, I mean, as you saw by my Tampa, I will gravitate to what's fun, what I'm not going to lose. I blow Stephen Crawley's mind because he's like, but you know what the best army is. Why don't you play it? I'm just going to play what's fun.
I feel like we both get yelled at that.
All the time. That's why Brad and I are perfect for this, because we are the only people who are like, yep, I know what the best army is. Yep, I played it. No, I do not want to take it 2,000 miles. Nope, not doing it. So let's be realistic here. If you're going to take Imperial Knights, you can do well. Brian Jones, fantastic Knight player. He's taking the army. He is winning above average amount of the time with it, and that is clearly based on his player skill. So if you wanted to play Imperial Knights right now, do it. If you work hard, you will get results with them. Custodes are a little bit more of a problem. If the top armies are going to include a lot of dev wounds and you just have no defense against it, that's the one where I'm going to be like, maybe we put these guys on the shelf for a minute and see what they can do with it.
What's going on again? I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't understand why they wrecked their detachment roll. Why aren't they getting just a save versus devastating wounds, to be honest with you?
See, and that's, we talked about this. We had another video where we were talking about kind of the problems with the top armies at the time, and one of them was Custodes. And one of their main problems is the game rules are built around a mechanic that Brad and I don't agree with, which is devastating wounds. And they correctly addressed devastating wounds. But then Custodes is now in that weird spot where game design and game balance just aren't, they're just butting heads. So I think the only real option there is to just scrap it and say, we got to change something completely different for these guys. Hoping we're going to see that in the Codex, but they probably need a little bit of something until then. Like, bare minimum, they need points changes.
Yeah. I think that they have to have they need an attachment thing. But they're getting a Codex spring?
I can't remember the timeline.
Because it's AdMech, Necrons, DA, Tau are the next 4, correct?
Yeah, and then I believe Chaos Space Marines is in there somewhere, and Orks.
Yeah, with a bunch of people that don't need them right now, unfortunately.
Right, yeah.
I just think they have to give us a white dwarf type deal. You remember when they saved Sisters a while back when they gave them a white dwarf?
Blood Rose? Yeah.
Right.
That would be a great idea, actually. And that would sell, that would get them some sales really fast. If you're watching GW, give Custodes the white dwarf treatment just right off the bat. Give me something to put my Custodes back on the table.
100%. I just think that if you gave them an attachment white dwarf, you know what I mean, that you could basically put some spackle on the time between now and when we get a Codex form. And I think that's a big deal, though, because you can't tell people to go pound sand if this is the only faction you play. You know what I mean? For me, it's not a big deal because I'm a gypsy and I'll just pick up anything and just play it. But like, if you're a faction specialist, I think you're having someone do a huge disservice to you if you do that. And I don't think that they're that hard to fix. I think the Imperial Knights are easy to fix. I think Custodes, aren't easy, but I think that they're way doable. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
There are things you can try without breaking the game. But on that note, before we get too wrapped up in it, why don't we hit someone who has a serious issue?
the ugly.
And man, is that guy ugly. Whew.
Well, you know, things happen, bro. So, Dark Elves. I love that Drukhari actually had a good win rate last week. Didn't have a ton of games played, but they did well. Dark Elves, they're in a dark place. Woo! Man, as someone that ran a lot of Dark Elves, as usual when they were really good, and then I went, you're dead to me as soon as they were even remotely bad. The stuff that you want to play with them doesn't even exist. This army's infuriating to me because Dark Lances are amazing. Just deal with it and move on. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I guess you could run Ravagers, Planes, and basically if it has a Dark Lance, it's good. But man, their entire slate of hand-to-hand is bonkers town hilarious. You could be sitting in a lawn chair, literally having a Mai Tai on the beach and a full unit of Blood Brides. You're like, come on, girls, seriously, stop it. I'm trying to watch the sunset here.
Yeah.
Like, they do nothing. Hellions, witches, it's just anything that was like anything that I own 1 million of, for one. It has absolutely laughable output. There's strength 3 and 4 in a meta where you have T10 everywhere. T10 up. It is bonkers. They do just absolutely nothing. They also have no AP. They don't even take out infantry well. And you got to figure that almost everybody got bumps in toughness. Terminators, Gravis armor, hell, Squighog boys. I literally think that you could take a 6-man Squighog boy with a Nabot Smash a Squig, pop the -1 to wound strat, and literally stand in front of the entirety of all of their melee. Maybe not Drazar, but that's it. And it's crazy. And every time I try to make this army, it literally becomes me making Dark Eldar and then just putting more Eldar stuff in it until it's a bad Eldar army. I don't even know what you do with this.
Okay, so here is where, there is a quote later on in this video where, that saves this comment, but you can fix this by just giving them more Dark Lances. But I think what Brad and I are saying is, don't do that, please. Do not just make this, how many Dark Lances can I put in an army until it has a 50% win rate? That is not what I ever see Drukhari being about.
It's not what they are as an army, though, either. It doesn't matter if they get the 50% win rate, because why are you playing them? That's not how you play Drukhari. It just doesn't feel like a rating force. KR made a great point. He goes, is there a way to change their power from pain like they changed Votan and help them? I don't know. It's just... I mean, maybe, yeah, exactly. Austin's got, he goes, rewrite the index to do more boat shenanigans, maybe some, flip backs in, Harlequin style. I just don't know. It's just that their damage means nothing. Like, if 10 witches got out and hit literally anything in the game, except for Gretchen, I guess Gretchen could be... I'm trying to think of something to win against.
Okay, if someone needs to quote that. The only thing Dark Elves are good for is beating up Gretchen.
Exactly. I mean, their detachment also sucks. The rule, they have no good rule. I mean, this is a bonkers bad army. You know what I mean? You can just play MSU and score, or you can just go Codex Dark Lance and just go, I hope my opponent didn't brought an elite army. Codex Dark Lance does work against straight elite armies. However, if anybody brings anything else, you're just like, well, bummer, that's all I brought was guys that shoot twice.
Yeah, and also, they do have the big problem of, you ask yourself when you're playing this army, what does it do? What is its identity? And you think of Dark Elves as like the Raiders. They're coming in, they're hitting you from a distance with pinpoint precision, and then they are attacking you with viciously, and then
close up. They're running at you. They're killing people. They're grabbing slaves. They leave. That's their whole deal.
Exactly.
Raven Force, boom, hit and run, zoom. They're out of there. Man, nobody cares if they get close to you right now. I mean, just nobody.
Yeah, you get to the point where some intercessors start beating you up, and you're like, intercessors?
I love this.
I'm dying to intercessors?
This is the best comment so far. We have a newish player at the store. After his first game against DE, he just went, "Oh, that army does nothing." He's not wrong.
He's not wrong. Oh, man. You got to give him something.
No, we talked about Knights. We talked about Custodes. Both of them need some work. The Knights, I think, are easier. You just roll back some stuff. Custodes need a little... They literally need a 2-page White Dwarf, and they would be fine. Dark Eldar, I don't even know what you do. You just go, "Hey, man, we were just joking," and you give them all new stuff. Literally, what's the answer here? Yes, exactly. Guard has better melee. By the way, by a lot. It's
by
not
a lot,
even
actually.
it's like not even close.
You just take a look at Gaunt's Ghost datasheet for melee, and you're like, "Oh, this actually doesn't do nothing. Like, this will beat up some intercessors." And then you look at like witches, and you're like, "Yeah, these aren't hurting anybody ever. They're just there to dance around as you like swat them away like little gnats."
Dude, Dark Eldar have a poster of Gaunt's Ghost up in the room.
Yeah. But how do you fix them? This is one where I think
Anti-keywords?
they need the death. No, they need the Death Guard treatment. They were going with this idea of like, we're gonna make the edition about shooting, and what's their shooting thing? Dark lances. Okay, well, how do we make them consistent? Pain tokens. Okay, now they're reroll hits, and it's just like, have you talked to a Drukhari player? Like, why would they want to do that? And it's fine, kinda. I mean, you can play it perfectly, and you still got Dark lances, but that's not what they're supposed to be doing. So I think this is one...
It's literally not what the army concept is. The IP of Dark Eldar is so far from what you can actually do with them right now. It's just bonkers town how it's not even in the same dimension. Like, I used to have so much fun with tons of Hellions and Witches and Incubi and all these fast vehicles and everything just zooming around. Was it fragile? Hell yes, it was fragile. Did it hit super hard? Yes, it felt like a Dark Eldar army. Now it's like basically the Diet Coke of Eldar. It's so.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're going with I'm sorry, we didn't actually provide the answer. So the answer is, if Brad's been dancing around it too, if you want to play Dark Eldar, you want to still do well, you bring some Eldari with you. Now, if that sounds gross to you, this is going to be a shelf army for me. It is set it on the shelf, let GW give it the Death Guard treatment, and say, "Hey, this is actually a problem to us," and they fix it, and then you put it back on the table. That's what I'm going to say. Brad, what do you think?
If you're okay with playing Codex Darklance, this is an army you could play still. It'll feel rough because it's still a fragile army that's doing this. But otherwise, if you want to play Dark Eldar as you have thought about it since they came out, it is a shelf. If you want to just play Codex Darklance, you could try to play it. You're going to probably sprinkle in Eldar with it too. You know what I mean? But also, the sidetrack, because this was always going to be the answer. Mashed potatoes is laughably better with pot roast. I mean, come on, man. Stop being a communist. But with this army, I don't think you can make a Dark Eldar army that feels like Dark Eldar. It's going to feel like Codex Darklands. And that's... I don't know what you do with this. The Custodes and Knights, I feel easily fixable, and I actually feel that they probably will be fixed by the Christmas. When we get the December data slate, or whenever it comes out, end of December, beginning of January, I feel that Knights and Custodes will be fine. They will put points in, put a couple, bullet points of detachment type things, totally work it out. Dark Eldar are, like you said, they're in a dark place.
Well, enough of being in a dark place.
Let's go to like and subscribe.
Please, if you enjoy our content, the best way to show us is to like the video. If you're watching the stream right now, just go click the like button. What does this do for us? It helps us get out there. Brad and I have no idea what the algorithm's doing, and we want to help people. We want to give you 40K without a paywall. And if you love this series, drop us a comment saying this was awesome. Tell us what you want to see from us out of the next ones, and consider hitting that subscribe button on Dice with Rice 40K and on the Death or Glory channel.
Thank you much. Let's talk about Codex design revealed, and I feel that this was actually one of the biggest things that they said.
100%. This is the moment where I was like, did they actually just say that? Okay, that gives you a lot of info.
For a change, I'm just going to read, as opposed to paraphrasing like I always do.
Okay.
Stu Black. We don't expect every detachment to be equally good, competitively. Well, we don't want any stinkers. There should be a couple of really good ones if playing competitive is your thing. A lot of players play what is cool, or they have a narrative theme in mind, so the detachments are trying to do a bunch of different things. We will be reasonably pleased if there are going to be some good options for players if that's their mindset. And that's a big deal on that, because, let's go to the thing, some detachments are, and they've done this forever. What GW wants is multiple armies to come out that are competitive. The min is that there is something competitive in there. So they have certain detachments that are competitive by design, and they have certain detachments that are intentionally fluffy detachments that are trying to do a certain way. Either a chapter, a subset, a witch cult type thing. You know, they want that to feel different. And that's fine. And this is a big deal, and they have said this multiple times, but they don't put it out as big as they just did with this. Because they know that the detachments are not going to be equal, and they don't care. You know what I mean? They don't care that Gladius first company. Is the first company a trash tier? Yeah. Do they give a shit? Absolutely not. Because it may let you do something on the board with it. And you have to know that when you're trying to make your army, if you're making a competitive army and you want to do well at a tournament, is this something that is me trying to play a narrative type thing? Or is this me trying to win an 8-game tournament? And it's a lot of difference there.
Yeah, and we're getting this comment a lot right now. So the big thing to keep in mind is where do they put success in a detachment? Well, if their overall goal is it to be the narrative detachment, then success for them is it feels like what it should feel like on the table. It's not necessarily that it's good in the sense of like, I'm going to beat you with my first company Marines. It's I'm going to put my first company Marines on the table at my local store, my club, and it's going to feel like the book I just read. It's going to feel like I'm playing first company. It doesn't matter if that person wins or not. They don't care about that. They are actively addressing the millions, and yes, that's millions with an M, millions of people who enjoy 40K, 40K lore, 40K models just in general into paint, and they're giving them something that really speaks to them. Now, for us on Deal With It, we're focused on the competitive side. This is great because I don't have to spend my time going, is there a broken combo in this detachment that's just so good I have to take? No, there's not. I don't have to keep going. I will tell you, I'm not going to keep going with first company detachment. That is never on my radar. Instead, I'm going to focus on Gladius. I'm going to focus on Vanguard Spearhead. I'm going to focus on Ironstorm or Firestorm and just know that it's okay to do that. That is what they're giving me as the game designers. And that's why I thought this was such a big reveal. And I didn't see anybody else talking about that. So I wanted us to talk about it today.
I do want to go with the next slide on this, because also hopefully my microphone doesn't sound too jacked because I did slam it on the ground. Oopsie. And I was saying, and I got my my witness right here for this.
You did throw that mic, threw it on the ground. That was Brad. That was Brad just now.
Love it. Slam you before you go live. Love it. 2, we have encouraged people to take advantage of synergies, combinations of units, rules, attachments, blah, blah, blah. However, synergy doesn't always equal good. Synergy just means that it's something that they put together for that particular detachment. So
exactly.
Some of them are amazing. Some of them are stupid.
This. So I dropped this on Brad. This is something you can do. If this is your jam, do it, man. I'm not going to tell you it's the best thing since sliced bread, but you can do this. So what is this? Okay, you take the Anvil Siege Force, your Space Marines, and this is exactly what Stu wants, and you can see it very clearly in their design. Army rule Space Marines. I reroll my hits against a target of my choice. Cool. Okay. Detachment rule. If I stand still, I get +1 to hit. And sometimes I get +1 to wound. If I do X, Y, Z. Sure. Okay. Is 40K a game about standing still or moving? Moving. It's a game about moving, but you could stand still. Okay, so what do we...
But then you're standing in the open.
I know. You got to stand in the open. So what are they going for? Well, they're giving you some hints. They want you to take some indirect options, because then they give you the stratagems that you're supposed to combo with it. 1 CP, give a unit sustained 1. And if you did that thing that Brad and I are never doing, which is just stand still and do nothing, you get crits on 5s. So now you get exploding 5s. Cool. Unit rules. I'm going to take Reboot Gilliman, so I can use that strat twice. I'm going to take Desolators that can stand still and ignore cover with exploding 5s, hitting on 2s. I'm going to get +1 to hit with my Incursors that are going to shoot you. I'm going to get extra AP against your infantry, and I'm going to ignore cover with a Hammer Strike. Behold, look at all this synergy that I designed into my game. And then there's me and Brad over here like, but why?
It's 450 points for you to make a unit okay.
Gosh.
Just do something else.
Yeah. And yes, Mando points out there are some other strats that they just like chuck in there. It's like, look at this cool thing they can do. But the big takeaway from this should be they design in a certain way for some things to be competitive and some things to be narrative. Now, that does not mean they want every narrative player to just lose every game immediately because their army's bad. They do give them little nuggets, fall back towards an objective. That's very key. Good strat. But why am I doing that when I could take Gladius and have my entire army advance in charge? I think that's just flat out better than everything this detachment offers. I'm not going to say I'm going to take Gladius, but just for example, yeah, there's no reason to take Anvil. 40K is about moving. If you get benefits from standing still, cool. Some of your army is going to do something, but it would probably do it better in another detachment if you're talking about strictly what is better than something else.
I mean, Brandon, of course, is mad at that. The mounted as no mounted. So Ivan's got a point. He goes, seems like the indirect fire and fade, and shootability are the bad interactions in the game. Agreed.
100%.
Anytime that you and your opponent don't get interaction, the game kind of sucks.
Yep.
It's just a fact. So
that's yep.
Also, every time indirect's too good, the game blows. So we've had that multiple times, and we have to nerf it. We ride this weird wave of, hey, indirect's ridiculous. Oh, okay, guys, my bad. Let's point them out. Let's do this. And then they do it again. And then we do it again. And you're like, hey, man, every single time indirect gets too powerful, the game blows. It'll be better this time.
Yeah, and that's not where we're going with it. This is a really good point. I saw this in chat. Yes, some units are great in some detachments. And then you realize, like, the rest of your units are just kind of eh. And I could just take another detachment. All my units are suddenly useful. So that's where you need to keep the goal in mind of the designers. This is not on you. It is not on you to solve every detachment's problem and play your perfect Imperial Fists army in Anvil. It's to know, hey, if I want to do that, they gave me something else. Does that suck? Maybe. I don't know. That depends on you. But dealing with it is understanding that's their goal. Their goal is we've got these competitive attachments, we've got these not so competitive attachments, and you choose your own adventure in the little box that we've given you.
Let's talk about the unbalance here, because I think this is a big thing, and I'm actually going to start from the bottom. Because Stu, I've talked to Stu about these things before. And he's like, sometimes you can't just balance it with points. There are limitations. And I actually hate trying to balance with points, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm always on mechanics, because I would rather see them, and this is just a Brad opinion thing. I would rather see them. This is also hurting the shit out of my head, so I'm going to take this off for a minute here.
There you go.
But
Unicorn Brad down.
Unicorn Brad down. It's so small. Her head is so tiny. But when you keep pointing something, most of the time, in my opinion, it just doesn't work. You know what I mean? Because you either point it out of existence or you don't do anything that the person cares about. And usually that's because there's a broken mechanic or a busted mechanic or a mechanical interaction with the rules. And I would rather see them fix that mechanic. I'd rather actually see them fix it and get it, or try to fix it and get it wrong, than I would them just throw points at shit. And we looked back at that the first initial wave of points and stuff, when they tried to fix towering by using points. And it did absolutely nothing. And that's a big deal, because I'd rather see them try. Points feel like you're not trying. You're just kind of like, how about this? You know what I mean? We did that for a while in 8th and 9th, when every time we didn't fix the fly mechanic until much later. And every time we had a problem with flyers, what would happen is they would go, oh, this is broken. It now costs 7,000, and you wouldn't take it. And you're like, did that fix the flyer mechanic? No, not even remotely. But it made it so you don't have to look at that particular flyer anymore. And then a new codex would come out with a new flyer that was busted, and we'd have the problem again. And then a couple months down the road, they'd again just make it 7,000, and you wouldn't take it. So I hate points, because it just means you don't play things.
Well, it's also the other half, which he did mention, thankfully, and this is Brad kind of going on. Hey, Stu Black and the design team as a whole are recognizing, hey, our first approach to this probably wasn't great. That's what I see out of the statement. But also they said another great thing, which I forgot to put on the slide, but they understand and they have recognized now and admitted their fault in that sometimes they would point things in a way that people just go, okay, well, I lost 20 points here and I gained 20 points here, and my list is the same. Okay, so now we're going to make it so that there's actual decisions that have to be made later. I think that goes hand in hand with balancing it with points. Usually isn't a good option, but certainly if you're going to try to balance it with points, you need to actually make the points impactful in the list that you're envisioning someone taking, versus just like, yeah, this unit's too good, up it by 20. This unit wasn't great, lower it by 20. Oh, those are in the same list. Whoops. So you can't be doing that.
Yeah, and there's a couple great quotes on the wall here. One, everybody says that's what we've been saying for a while, but like the points who basically put something out of or into play. And that's a big deal, because sometimes you're taking something just based on the fact that, oh, they made it ridiculously cheap and I have to take it. You know what I mean? So, and then there's the whole KR. Points do too much collateral damage because they start pointing out similar things. Like when they did the indirect nerf and a bunch of stuff that wasn't even powerful got hit. So, hell, all of what the end of 8th and 9th, Sisters got collateral hits constantly from that. Was Sisters the problem? Nope. But they stood next to the problem, so they're probably a problem. You're like, I'm totally not the problem. You're like, yeah. You know the problem, so that's close enough.
Exactly. Getting in some of the nitty gritty here. People always like to just drop all this misinformation on when's the next balance or what. Okay, here's your straight answer. It's in January. Unless Eldar starts winning every tournament or Orcs start winning every tournament for the next 2 months. It's in January. They desperately want to just do points. Do Brad and I think that's the right way? No.
No.
But that's their goal. Remember, this is not about dealing with it, is not about what we want. It's about where it is. And they have said, this is the meta. This is what it looks like to us. We want it to be points. But they did add the caveat, like I said, if everything's going wrong, they'll do another data slate if they need to. Now, what they said they would do regardless of points, and this is what I think people miss sometimes, regardless of the points, they're going to take a look at the previous data slate and see if they need to revisit things in it. What does that mean? I think that kind of goes along with what Brad and I are saying for towering models. Potentially, I could see them changing a few of the rules. And then, of course, everybody wants to know, well, what did they say? What units did they say? Specific units that they mentioned. They want to nerf the Avatar of Cain. They want to nerf Breakguard, and they want to nerf Night Spinners. What are they going to do with it? Well, they said they want to just change points. So you can expect
mechanics.
These units. I know, Brad. You can expect these units to go up in points. And I will tell you 100%, if these 3 units go up a collective 130 points, I will cut out the Phoenix Gem and a Warp Spiders and play the same list, and it will be just as good. Because no Eldar game I've ever played with or against has come down to 1 unit of Warp Spiders. So if you're watching this GW, you need to change the rules on these models if you agree that they're a problem.
And the thing
That's
is,
all I got on that
to be
front.
honest with you, one of the best things to do with that is actually to go on Warhammer Community. They have a guy that's literally in charge of getting feedback from everybody. And as long as your feedback isn't, you suck toes, they'll look at it. So, like, put in your ideas, but put them in a respectful manner and throw it up there. They really do look at them. That's a real thing.
And I am going to tell you, do not go there and tell them the guy in the unicorn ears told me that you need to go suck toes. Do not do that. Do not tell them where it came from. Don't do that.
I feel like this is going to happen a lot, but
be respectful. Brad's right. There is a place for you. There are appropriate ways to say, hey, this isn't okay. I think what Brad and I are doing here is one of them, is say, hey, we don't think this is great. We'll accept it whichever way you go with it. Do not just go flame them. I see that all the time on when the meta is really bad. People just flame them with horrible things. These are people who are trying. It may not seem that way to us as someone who is very invested in the game. Sometimes it doesn't seem that way. But remember, these people, this is their job, and they're trying to make it good. They love Warhammer. I guarantee you, each one of the people that is contributing to these rules loves Warhammer just as much as you do. So don't flame them.
And that's the big thing is that you're just not going to get your comments read, or at least it's not even just read, taken seriously. Because if you fire somebody up, they're just not going to listen to it. Even if you make a good point after you suck, they're not going to get that point. You know what I mean? So throw up the reasons why, but again, they literally go through that stuff. You know what I mean? So it's a big deal.
Matt says Night Spinners could be in the 3 strike zones, get up to 220. I'll tell you right now. That is a unit of Warp Spiders and a Phoenix Gem. Is downgrading one of my Shadow Specters to a Swooping Hawk and taking out a Warp Spider.
Night Spinners are so bonkers.
It's not going to work. You cannot fix them with points. You can try all you want. I'm telling you right now for free, I will just do this exactly. And if you just change those units around and you make Swooping Hawks cost slightly more and Shadow Specters cost slightly more, I'll just drop another unit. Night Spinners are just dumb. You can just make people lose because they deployed wrong. And there's no way to fix that other than to fix their rules.
Yeah. Orc vehicles have a picture up of the Night Spinner in their bedroom also. With that being said, give yourself some promotion out here.
Sweet, yeah. We are actually exploding over on my channel where this will hopefully be later today. Dice with Rice 40K. I am really enjoying all the community's thoughts and opinions on everything, and I love reading your guys' comments. Also, don't forget to check out Still Frosty Gaming, where Brandon and I do battle reports. We're going to do more competitive battle reports, and while we have been traveling and going on vacation, we're finally going to play this Thursday. So if you want to come watch new Space Marines battle some Thousand Suns, check that out on Thursday on Still Frosty Gaming.
Tomorrow I'll be with Still Frosty on 1 o'clock, 1 Eastern Standard Time, and we will be doing modeling shenanigans where I am a little tiny guy in the corner while he does, modeling stuff with magic and That's how I think modeling works, by the way. Magic, right?
100%. Brad just envisions a model and suddenly it appears perfectly ready for him.
What? You keep saying that like it's a bad thing. So, on that note, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. And until the next time, Queenswave.